Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show.
Oh,
Dana, how are you?
pretty good, all things told.
That's
What?
it.
Well, we just had another show on Wednesday. I've actually written some fanfics since then.
Yeah, because I don't, did we talked a little bit about it on Wednesday. You had read the Death and Life of Superman novel,
Yes,
and
and I
you
said
were
that it had
yeah.
it had inspired me because I knew I could do better than that, and I was right, Stephen,
you. It's happened before.
many a
Um,
time.
it's like it's amazing how motivating that can be, isn't it? For if you are like a fanfic writer, I mean, you read like something official.
Published work.
Yeah, you read something official and you're like, I could do better than that.
Yeah,
And then you sit down and you try to do better than that. Like it's really motivating.
it really is. But I mean, if anybody who saw the show on Wednesday knows, I was away from home. And that
Yes.
helped as well. It was just, honestly, just, walking into my friend's house, I was just like, oh, there are like no expectations. Like, the expectation of being a decent human being and not like, I
Yeah.
don't know, hurting
Base
your friends.
basic social expectations.
Well, no, actually, even I don't, I think they're lower than that because like a fair amount of the time, like they'd be playing different video games in different parts of the house, and like everybody would be on just different devices playing different games or on social media or writing fanfic, and we just be chilling
Mhm.
in the same house and not really interacting. And then sometimes we would, we went to a park and went for a walk together, and we would go out to eat and we watched some movies together and stuff like that and talk about them. But it was very, 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 very low
Yeah.
intensity.
Low pressure. Yeah. Which I'm
So,
sure you appreciated because, I
oh
know that
boy, did I
you've,
ever! It was
yeah.
so nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really cool.
So
So
now we
yeah,
get,
I
yeah.
might. It gave me hope that it is possible to finish something.
Well, of course it
So
is. Of course it is. I mean, and you, what
for you, you say
you,
that like
I
when
say that you have finished things before. You have finished things before. I'm not just talking about like, oh, of course, it's easy for you to say. Like, you finished things before and they've been wonderful. So,
yeah, I know, but this one's longer, and I'm not good at finishing longer things. It's not as long as like that, you know, Batgirl
oh,
and
yeah.
Harley Quinn story that's good, like epic in scale. But it's a lot longer already than the Talia story, and
Oh, for sure.
we're still in the early days of the Lois one.
Yeah.
But I got past, or at least I got past the actiony stuff. There's been an explosion. Woohoo! So
I'm looking forward to when it gets to the point where you feel like it's ready to share with people, if indeed you do choose to share it and you want to like read it on a live stream or something, because your version of the first meeting between Lois and Superman is very different from any of the sort of canonical or official versions that I've seen, and I really dig it. So I'm looking forward to other people getting to read it or hear it or what however
it
you
made
choose
so
to.
much
Yeah,
sense to me, and I think it sets a different tone for their relationship. That the whole, which I think is much more modern. The whole. Honestly, let's be real. Even in when the Death and Life of Superman was '90s, when we were both reading comics.
yeah.
And honestly, even then, the canonical backstory for Lois first sees Superman when he saves her, not just her, in fairness, but
Yeah, a bunch
she
of
is she
people.
is a rescued victim the
Yeah,
first time she and anybody else sees Superman.
and that kind of sets the tone, and that's not always a good thing to have that
Yeah,
be.
you know what I mean. It's not.
Yeah,
There's not. It's understandable. She happens to be on that airplane, and it doesn't say anything negative about her, but it doesn't. It doesn't say anything interesting or distinct about her because it's not about her. It's about Superman. And Superman saves a plane full of people because that's just what Superman does. And Lois is incidental. And
yeah.
I'm like, yeah, no. I mean, it's Lois Lane, Superman's girlfriend, all over again.
It is really, I mean, it's one of the things that I think it helps to break things down into sort of basic ingredients, because I don't remember at the time it was happening, because I think I was like 5 or 6 and I wasn't really following comics. But I've since gone back and read, interviews with people, and read the actual comics from the first major Superman reboot in like 1985, 1986, when John Byrne rebooted it after Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Yes.
And a lot of that stuff is still
Yeah, I
holds
was
up and
doing
is
some
still
math quick
really.
because I thought you were talking about death, the death of Superman. And I was like, you're older than
Oh no, I was like
God, were
13 or
you? I mean, I
14.
know you're
Yeah.
young
I'm 2 years younger than you.
compared to. I'm
2 years
never gonna
younger
let
than
you
you.
live that down. Never,
um,
never.
but anyway, but so
You're a munchkin.
yeah, I'm a babe in the woods. But one of the things that John Byrne and that the not just him, but all of the creators that were sort of rebooting
In on it.
Superman at the time, yeah, one of the things they wanted to do was to modernize Lois, and just like, well, she's not going to be, Lois she's not going to be like the Noel Neal Lois from the 50s, or Lois from the 60s, and where she's just there to be rescued by Superman. She's going to be a strong, independent, liberated, modern woman. And
Oh,
it's
she's
like,
gonna be a strong, independent woman.
and the
Ah,
well, and
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 it's a
yet,
bunch of guys who are deciding what that
well,
looks
that's
like.
that's a
Just
whole different that's a
right.
whole that's a whole different problem. But yeah, you're that's also a good point. But you know, your strong, independent, liberated Lois Lane, and her first encounter with Superman is being rescued by him. So it's like, if you just take that simple thing, like if you just ask yourself basic questions, how does she meet Superman? And if one of your goals is to do Lois in a different way and have her be a little more independent and have her not be just person to be rescued by Superman all the time, ask that question of, well, what are the circumstances of her meeting Superman for the first time? And should it be that she just gets rescued by him? Maybe it should be something else, and make
Well,
that
not.
the
I mean,
starting point.
there's nothing. But the biggest quibble I think I have with it is two of them. There's nothing that sets her apart from anybody else on that plane. I mean, it is a group thing.
Right. Yeah. She's just on the plane. Yeah. When
And there's
disaster
nothing.
strikes.
It's like I said, it's not about her, and so it's about Superman, and so there's nothing special that makes it, and Jimmy, I think Jimmy's there typically.
Possibly. Yeah. It's been a while since
And
I
so,
read it,
which
but
is nice
possibly.
because it gives her somebody to talk to. But again, that's because it's not about her. And I mean, even though she is a major supporting character, it really de-emphasizes her role, that we don't, she has to have somebody to talk to. That there are other people involved, that we're not focused on her, and she has no agency in that plane. I mean, she's just it's a big metal box in the sky, you know?
Yeah. She's not, and if Superman's not there, there's nothing she can do to change the situation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, they could have had the plane crash land in the sea and had her helping people evacuate. She could have, they could have rewritten that, and then Superman comes in, and I don't know, maybe there's a storm coming in or something else. Superman could do something else, but they could have even rewritten that scene to have her doing something, because she's just like, she's very much just random passenger number 32 at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Aside
Well,
from
yeah,
the fact, I don't know if Superman knows who she is at that point.
and I mean, even if, because what you're saying about how, like, well, it's not about Lois, it's about Superman. I mean, that makes sense if it's Superman's book and the point of your story is to reintroduce Superman. But even if the story is centered on Superman, Lois is still an important character, and there are still ways to write Lois, even if she is not the center of the story, where she doesn't just serve as damsel in distress.
Yeah. And
And yeah,
starting off with that,
yeah,
um,
exactly. If that's, yeah, that sets the
it sets the
tone.
tone. It
Yeah,
really
exactly.
does.
And, if you just do something as simple as finding a different way, to have them encounter each other for the first time. Like that
Well,
makes a
like I
difference.
said, I mean, even the the simplicity of go ahead, have the plane crash, or crash land carefully in the water, have it be a problem landing, and the plane is sinking, and they have to get people out, and some people are injured and or trapped, and Lois is helping get people out, but they're not going to have enough time.
Right. And
And
that's when
Superman comes
Superman,
and pulls the plane out of the
yeah.
water. I mean, give her something to do. My God, just give her something to do other than create problems by getting in trouble and then be
Yeah.
rescued.
It's,
And
I don't know if I've ever told you this. I don't know if I've ever said this. We might have mentioned it when Jason and I reviewed this movie on our podcast, but one of the few scenes in my beloved Superman Returns that I absolutely hate and wish they would just take out
oh no,
is a Lois scene. It's when Superman, it's very similar to it's, and I think intentionally, like it's staged to be very reminiscent of Superman's debut in the comics, like where he saves a crashing plane, right?
mm-hmm.
With Lois aboard. And in the movie, it's not. It's in the movie, it's Superman's return. It's not the first time we've seen him, but it's the first time that they've seen him in a long time. So, but it's staged very much like how his debut is in the comics, and it's an awesome sequence. It's a great like special effects action superhero sequence. Superman saves a plane from crashing. It's awesome. He sets the plane down in the middle of a baseball diamond during a baseball game. It's like the most American Superman thing you can imagine. The people in the in the stands are cheering because Superman's back and he's just saved an airplane from crashing. He rips the door off. He flies into the plane to make sure everybody's okay. Lois stands up from her seat, and he and Lois, it's the first time Lois has seen him in like 5 years. So they have this sort of silent moment between them, and he looks at Lois and says, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah." And he gives a little speech to the people on the plane and then leaves. And that's all like fantastic. That's perfect. Superman flies away. Lois walks out to the inflatable ramp, like to get people off the plane, looks up at Superman and faints and slides down the slide. And that's like the end of the scene. So not only does it make Lois look like a goof, but it ends this beautiful scene on this dumb, like slapsticky, unfunny, comical moment. It's so bad. It's bad and
ouch.
it's bad for Lois. It's bad for the scene. It's awful. And it's the one thing in that movie that if I could change one thing about that movie, that's what I would. My fan edit of Superman Returns would be the exact same movie, just without that shot, because it's
Just like
so
cut
bad.
away as she looks up and watches him fly away.
Yeah, exactly. We don't need to. Why does she have to fake? It's not funny. It makes her look weak. It makes her look like a cliche. Uh, it's just awful. It's awful. So yeah, and it's exactly that sort of thing where it's like, do we want it? Do we want Lois to be a character, or do we want her to just be a plot device to get into trouble so Superman has somebody to save? You know?
And I haven't told you, but that she gets mad at him for stealing her byline, but it's not the Superman story, which it classically is.
Yeah.
That was something that I noticed from that. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. And like I'd forgotten that I'd changed that. I love that she gets mad about which byline he takes. But let's be honest, that particular story is not reason enough to get him hired at the planet. He writes a different story, and that's the one that gets him hired. But I have to check our timeline, and I haven't done that, so don't let me forget to do that.
Oh, I will remind you. And by the way, for people watching, we are discussing Superman, but we are going to get into Readaway and the other Westmore here in just a minute. But we're just sort of
We got 5 more minutes, folks.
yeah. This is our customary 20-minute shooting the shit at the beginning. Yeah, and
Yeah,
Sarah in the
they
chat.
needed the
Yeah,
smelling salts.
exactly.
Clearly.
It's just like I said, and it's really because the portrayal of Lois in the movie, generally speaking, is pretty good, except for that. So it even feels out of character for her for in the rest of the movie, you know. And I know why. I mean, I know why they did it. They did it because Margot Kidder did the same thing in the first Superman movie when Superman saves her from the helicopter and he flies away. She has a moment where she faints, and I would get rid of that too. That's dumb too. Like you don't need that either. It's just like it's cheap. and it's, like, oh, she fainted. It's so, it's just,
Not good writing.
lose it. Just lose it. Yeah, exactly.
So,
Just
can you guess?
cool. Can I guess what the story that Clark writes is?
Yes.
Oh boy.
I think I've given you enough clues that you should be able to figure it out.
Well, does it have to do with you've given me enough clues during this conversation right now, or is it the story of the space plane rescue?
No.
No, that doesn't occur.
No. Think about what I've said and what might be a clue. What might have been a clue.
Oh, I don't know.
I said I need to check our timeline.
Right.
He's not the only costume.
Oh, does Clark write a story about Batman or something?
I think about the existence of Batman.
Interesting.
So Clark gets the scoop on Batman.
And Lois is upset about that.
And it's not a major story, but it's an interesting, investigative piece. And it's enough to get him, the writing and the skill that it shows is enough to get him hired, even though it's not like, it's not a big scoop, because it's not international news, and it's not, it's not specific to Metropolis. So it just goes sort of like it's buried in the news section. But, it's
and that's a good way, because for those of you who don't know exactly what we're talking about, this is a fanfic story that Dane is writing that is, if you've watched our streams a lot before, you know that we have sort of this idea for our own kind of shared fanfic universe where we write the stories and they all sort of take place in the same continuity. And so the story that you're working on now that we've been talking about is the first appearance of Superman in our timeline, and the meeting of Lois and Superman for the first time. So Clark, Clark writing like a story published in a major newspaper about Batman would be like a neat way to also introduce that thread of eventually Superman encountering Batman for the first time.
Yeah.
So that's a really cool idea.
But I need to make sure that Batman is actually around.
Right.
When Superman first appears. So
we can, it's our universe.
We can fudge it if we need to.
Do whatever we need to. Yeah.
Exactly. What the heck? So just don't let me forget that, because
I will remind you. Yeah.
You know me.
I'll check it myself too, because I can't remember if we said that Batman was already doing Batman stuff when Superman shows up or not.
I know we've got the list on.
It's all around the same time.
Yeah, it's nearby. Sarah Scott, I'm very hi, by the way, everybody. It's nice to see that there are people here. It's like I was very quiet. I'm like, usually there's like a little bit of yammering going on, this incessant yammering, as Miss Minchin says. Sarah Scott, we're done with the Joss Whedon stuff now, so you're good.
That's right.
Sarah, I'm curious if you popped in at that, if you you went to the end so that you would know what's going. Oh gosh, I'm sorry about your. Oh gosh, I'm sorry to hear about your boyfriend. That's he's learning more. Don't you start with that anyway? If you found out what we're doing next instead of Firefly and Serenity.
Yeah.
Not more Joss Whedon stuff.
Nope. We're out of the Whedon tunnel. We're leaving it behind us.
All right. So I guess we'll start off.
Well, I was just going to say, for everybody watching who's been with us before for the Other Westmore, if you have your answers to the Likert survey, go ahead and get those where you can look at them, because we're about to go over questions 6 and 7. Those are the next two that we are going to be reviewing our answers for.
You want to be surprised? Well, but are you not going to watch along with us? Anyway, so because
we'll mention.
You want to be surprised, but there's going to be uncomfortable silences if you don't have a copy of it.
Yeah, so we can tell you what it is now, or we can just wait and we'll mention it during,
and then you'll
Wednesday's
be able to
show.
Find a copy.
Yeah, exactly. You'll have a week then instead of a week and a half. You'll have a week.
or 20 minutes
Or yeah, yeah. If you wait, I mean, assuming she misses
until
the
the
Deep
day
Space
of.
Nine show, yeah,
But
yeah,
I'm sure we'll talk
yeah.
about it next week too.
Oh yeah,
All
well,
right, let
we
me pull
definitely.
up the questions, and then so this was this one. This was 6 and 7, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Woo. Okay, so um, number 6 was money does not buy happiness. And of course, you were to respond strongly agree, somewhat disagree, or strongly disagree. Money does not buy happiness.
So what did you
And
put?
I put B for somewhat agree. Because I don't think money by itself buys happiness, but I think money can buy relief of stress. Money can
That's
buy
pretty good.
comfort, and that, yeah, money can create the circumstances where happiness is easier to attain. So I don't want to say absolutely not. I totally agree. Money cannot buy happiness. Like, I feel like there's enough, space in there for me to say, well, I mean, maybe money can't buy happiness itself, but it can create, circumstances. You know what I mean?
Sarah Scott says that happiness is an emotional state, but one of the things when we're it's on my video about characterization, that emotional states are not character personality traits, because they change relatively easy, and they are dependent upon circumstances. Emotions are often connected to our situation. They do have something to do. They are connected with our paradigms and the things that we believe. They're influenced by that, but I would argue that they are more strongly influenced by circumstance. And money can certainly influence your circumstances.
Yeah.
And so I actually said somewhat disagree. For 6, I have C.
Okay.
And I've noticed that we tend to be one off from each other when we don't agree.
For similar reasons, yeah. Like,
exactly, for
yeah.
similar reasons. Now, some of this is I've taught the book before, and I'm pretty well read up on this. There was a Princeton study that was done that said money does scale with happiness up to about 75 grand a year. Now, this study was done, I want to say in 2012, but I'm not entirely sure on that. But if you just look for Princeton study, money buys happiness, $75,000, that'll get you a bunch of articles on that. Fair enough, Sarah. So it does come down to talking about what we mean by happiness, because subsequently, so essentially, it found that after scaling up, and essentially, like you said, having enough money so that the basic needs of life are met.
Right.
That medications, as Emerland says, not being in pain all the time, and making sure that that you have safe, comfortable housing, that you have enough food to eat and easy access to that food, all those sorts of things. So once your basic needs are met, money beyond that doesn't actually increase your happiness. But what subsequent studies found was that what they were reporting on was day-to-day happiness. Like, how happy are you right now on a scale of 1 to 10, or whatever it was. But what they also found was that when people were asked to reflect on their overall life satisfaction, it just kept going up. At higher income levels, people reported greater life satisfaction. And there didn't seem to be any top end to that. So it's different. It depends on what you mean by happiness. And what levels of money, and so the question, as I use it in class, we use it in a couple of different ways. One, to talk about what we mean by happiness and why sort of that basic needs, what counts as a basic need. And then we also talk about the way that information is presented and what that means for us as consumers of information, how we can ask questions about this and say, well, what does this not tell us? What do we still need to investigate? How could we find that out? As good readers as well. So, it definitely ties back in, the information gathering as readers, and
Yeah.
questioning and looking at how numbers can be represented. So it really fits in with that. So it's a lot of fun to look at that and think about that, and think about what that means.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, Sarah Scott, you did say we could tell you. So Sarah,
Oh,
it's a
okay.
movie. It's a movie, and it's Magic Mike. So it's streaming on HBO Plus, and Emily, and I wonder about that. Would you really, really want to be on a spaceship with Jeff Bezos?
Yeah. Joff Bezos.
Joff Bezos? Geoff?
I would if there was a parachute and I could sabotage the controls before we got up too high and I could jump to safety.
I don't know. All right, so the next one.
So the next,
number
yes,
7.
number 7
Men tend to
is
be more naturally athletic than women.
yes, and that one was one of the easy ones. I said strongly disagree for that one. D.
So what made you say that? Because actually, I put the same thing. I said D.
Hey. I mean, again, I suppose if there's I guess it depends on how you interpret the question, but to me, athletic is a broad term, and and I don't conceive athleticism in a gendered way. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like depending on what you're talking about or how you're conceiving certain terms, if you said, men tend to be stronger than women, or if you nailed it down to some physical characteristic that you could conceivably have hard data for, and you could say, like, even not to the point where you can draw any specific conclusions about any specific people based on whether or not they're a man or a woman, but just as an average, you could say, well, men
tend to have more upper body strength than women.
Men tend to be, or women tend to be, right? But with athleticism, like, that could mean, and does mean, and is used to mean, a million different things. And there are women who, I mean, the Williams sisters in tennis. I mean, there are women athletes who, if what we're looking at is athleticism, are just as athletic in their sports and just as impressive in their sports as men are in theirs. So, I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. It's like, of course, men aren't more athletic than women.
And that's, like with happiness, athleticism is something that I wanted students to talk about, what it means. I would tend to define athleticism as a skill. And that's one of the reasons that I didn't include strength. I think it would be more interesting to say men tend to be stronger than women, because I think it would start as, it could lead to that discussion about what it means to be strong.
What do you consider strength? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I felt that was there are limits to how much you can push the envelope, and I push it pretty hard on some of these other statements. Like last semester, I got a call from, or I got a text message from the principal that said, "Please call me when you have a chance." And I'm just like, oh, what did I do? What didn't I do that I should have done? And that's like, immediately it's like, oh God. And she said, there has been apparent concern that you are, that you're, teaching, that you're telling students, or that you have students studying police brutality. I'm like, no. I mean, not that I think there would necessarily be anything wrong with that. It is something that would be reasonable to study, to read articles about. But it would be very complex. And I would be reluctant to just dump that on high school sophomores. I would want, because it's not something I want to, I mean, that's where we get the word sophomoric. And I don't want to dump something on them that requires diligent study when they're not going to be willing to do that.
Right. Or when you might not have time in class to give it the attention that it demands.
Well, I mean, that would be up to me. that would be up to me. But if they're not willing to address it in a serious, empathetic way, then it can do more harm than good. And I'm not, I'm very, very cautious and, focused with class discussions, because it's not just, okay, you can say whatever you want. You do that. If you do that, then your dominant students are going to take over, and you not just risk, but you are likely to further alienate your more marginalized students.
Yeah.
And so that's just not cool. So yeah, so I was, there are limits, and I was able to say, no, I'm not doing. There's like literally, we were reading The Other West more at the time, and so I was able to say, no, I'm not doing that. I can, she asked for my lesson plans and the materials. I'm like,
yeah.
The book is written by somebody who's Black, and obviously race factors into that, but that's not something that is part of the curriculum or anything like that. We actually haven't talked about Black Lives Matter. It hasn't, students haven't brought it up. It's not part of the curriculum. There's been a lot more talk about COVID, because guess what?
Yeah.
That's what we're experiencing right now.
You're not, just as long as you're not teaching them critical race theory, because I'm told by people who I'm quite certain could not define critical race theory if you had a gun pointed at their head, that it's a very bad thing.
Are you? No, you're not.
No.
Have you really been told that it's a bad thing? I'm sure that you've heard that it's a bad thing, but it's difficult for me to imagine that anyone has said that.
It's like? It's like when you tell a joke from the first person because you feel like the joke works better that way, and then
but sometimes it doesn't, Steve.
Okay. Okay.
That's okay.
That's yeah. Okay. It's okay. Well, I'm okay.
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 But in fairness, so I did agree with you on the statement.
Yes, you did. Yes.
So there's
yes,
that.
you did. Yes, you did. There's that.
I'll give you that much, but
Okay, so shall we talk about the chapter?
Let's do.
Of the book?
Chapter 5.
Chapter 5 of The Other Westmore. We are now in the year 1991.
Yep. I like the beginning. It's just, we jump right into, we're like, obviously something different's going on.
Oh yes, absolutely. This is definitely, but it's something that we have been sort of
leading up to.
Yeah,
there have been indications.
Yeah, we've been set up to anticipate it. So what's going on? We start with Wes, the author in this chapter, and he has just arrived at military school, as his mother was threatening to send him to if he didn't pull his grades up. And I guess he didn't pull those grades up enough, because here he is at military school. And this is actually, when we meet him, this is his first morning at military school. And bye, Sarah. Sorry that you have to go as soon as we start talking about the book.
Sarah, did you hear what we said about the movie?
Yeah,
I sure hope so.
I hope, yeah. It's the stripper movie. It's the Channing Tatum stripper movie.
Woohoo!
Jason thinks that Channing Tatum should have played Superman, and I kind of think that would have worked. I think he would have been a good Superman. But anyway, not to drag it completely off topic.
Well, we're coming back around.
We're coming back around. So anyway, so yeah, we find Wes. It's 5:30 in the morning, and he's asleep in his room at the military school. And they've all been woken up, and everybody's supposed to get out of bed and get into the hallway. And Wes has decided that he's going to sleep in at military school on his first day. Yeah. So, his roommate is up and he's like, come on, we have to go. And Wes is just like, whatever. And he rolls over and goes back to sleep. And his commanding officer comes in, and it's a student chain of command, so it's like an upperclassman comes in who is a higher student rank than he is, and is like, get on your feet, get out, and he blows that guy off. He's like, get out of my room, let me sleep. So the guy's like, okay, and he leaves, and then um we get like a little break where we get like an interlude where
Flashback.
he talks about the decision that his mother made to send him to military school. um
Now, I will say I felt very validated when it said Anderson's anger, efficiently transmitted through his sonorous, full-toned voice, had shifted from general displeasure with all of us to a focused rage pointed in my direction. I'm like, oh, it's like Miss Minchin. Like, I do that.
yeah, totally.
So,
Absolutely. Very commanding.
yes.
um
Thank you.
and yeah.
So anyway, he sits up, and the first sergeant thinks maybe he's gotten through to him, and then he says, "Man, if you don't get out of my room," the first sergeant's just like, "Oh, so that's how it is."
Okay.
His eyes widened, then slitted. His angry face broke into a devilish smile. And just as quickly as he'd come into the room, he walked out. I'm just like, dude, you think you've won? And you're so
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, it's a good scene, but if you put yourself in Wes's place in real life, like how do you watch that reaction and think that you've just won that interaction? I
yeah,
mean, it's like
exactly.
if you
And
blow the guy
remember,
off.
he's thinking back on this like what, 20 years
Yeah.
later?
Yeah.
So let's. But again, it makes for a good scene.
It makes a
But
good scene.
it's
Yeah.
again, it's the Tempest Fugit question. How dumb was he?
He's like, "Oh, your commander who just like screamed at you to get out of bed, all of a sudden quieted down and smiled at you
you
and was
and
like,
walked away.
okay," and leaves. And you're just like, "I sure told him back to sleep." Like, come on, man. You know what's going to happen. But anyway, so yeah, we get this, we get the flashback where he talks about how he's, his grades are still bad, and he gets into a fight with his sister, and that's sort of the last straw. And his mom is like, "All right, you're out of here." And she's actually she slaps him a couple of times. Like, he kind of gets into a fight with his mom, and she decides to ship him out to this military school that is located in Pennsylvania. They're still living in the Bronx, but the military school is in Pennsylvania somewhere. I think, didn't he say it was close to Philadelphia? Or it's on, yeah,
Yes, yeah,
it's
it's
on the
near
main line,
Philadelphia.
yeah. So it's not like super super far away, but it's still, it's a few hours away. And then we get back to the scene at military school where the first sergeant and the rest of the chain of command, which are described as 8 large and angry teenagers, come back into the room, and they pick up his entire mattress with him on it and flip it over and dump
Flip it
him
upside
onto the floor.
down.
Yeah. And dump him onto the floor. And that's how he gets out of bed on his first morning of military school. And I really, I mean, I could have told you so, man. Like, I could have told you so. But he doesn't have a good time at military school. He tries to,
Imagine that.
I know, right? He keeps trying to run away, and that doesn't work out. He, you know, he says that he wakes up furious and goes to bed even more livid, and then one of his first sergeant comes to him and says, "Look, we can tell that you don't want to be here. The constantly
We don't
trying
want you.
the constantly trying to run away was a clue, and yeah, and we don't want you here. So here's again,
How
Wes
dumb was he?
Wes isn't showing me too many street smarts here, I'm afraid. The other Wes would never have fallen for this. I'll just want to put it out there. The other Wes would never have fallen for it. Tony has him smartened up to the point that he would never bite on this at all. But anyway, so the first sergeant hands Wes a map and he says, "Look, you don't want to be here. We don't want you here. Here's a map. Follow this
Get
map
out.
to go to the train station and just go home." And Wes is like, "Awesome." So that night he sneaks out and he follows the map. And of course, the map leads him around and around in circles in the woods. And he doesn't get anywhere. And finally, he gets, he sits down on a rock in the middle of the woods and he realizes that he's lost. And his chain of command, the 8 angry teenagers who dumped him out of bed, find him in the woods and come walking up to him. And of course, the map was a fake map and it was designed to get him lost. And of course it was. How could he not? Had he never watched a single movie ever? I mean,
Yeah,
obviously
Charles
that.
Chapman says the map scene seemed like it was straight out of an 80s movie.
Yes, exactly. It's like, did you ever watch like any movie about school or summer camp or kids like picking on the new guy? I mean, like, come on, man. You got to be. This is what got you in military school, Wes. You got to be smarter than this. um, but so they take him back to the school, and he's in the office of the commander of the school, like the grown up in charge, Colonel Battaglioli, or Colonel Bat, as he is usually called. Because who wants to pronounce an entire name? Come on. Colonel Bat, they call him. And he's this army officer who has just taken over control of the school. And yeah.
Steve, have you ever watched Major Payne?
Oh, yes. I love Major Payne. And actually, I thought about Major Payne reading this chapter because,
I mean, the wacky hijinks.
Yeah, exactly. And when they assign Major Payne to the school, and he says, "But must be somebody needs some killing," and his commander says, "I'm sorry, Payne, but there's not. You've killed them all." Are you telling me there is no place in this man's military for a trained weapon of destruction? He's like, "Nope, sorry. You're going to the school."
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, major Payne vibes from this chapter. But so he goes to Colonel Bat's office, and Colonel Bat says, "Look, I'm going to take pity on you. I'm going to let you make a phone call. You can call anybody you want, talk for 5 minutes. But then after that, that's it. And there's what's called the plebe system, which is what they use to, it's kind of like boot camp. Like the new students at the school, they have to basically go through, a lot of harassment and bullying and abuse before they can earn the right
hazing, dude.
Hazing, abuse. So they can earn the right to be cadets and treated with basic respect.
Hazing is abuse, but it's a specific type of abuse. It's not just new guy abuse, but new group abuse.
That's right. Yeah. Well, and it's that, we got to break you down to build you up. Horseshit.
Well, sort of. I mean, having been in marching band, I will say, I didn't really experience it in high school, but I did to some extent in college. They were, when I went to Florida State and joined the Marching Chiefs, they were very limited in, yeah,
Radical Bacon said, and Radical Bacon would know, having been in the military. So it's not like boot camp. It's more like being a freshman at a military college, which, okay, makes sense.
Yeah, it's or like the Greek system, like sororities and fraternities.
Yeah,
they'll have their pledge week.
Yeah,
and so you essentially do silly things, and sometimes they would have them do dangerous things or I mean, even illegal activities, or you would go through, you would get jumped in if you were like it's being jumped into a gang.
Right. Right.
But
Yeah.
I
That's a
mean, I
great way
didn't
to put it because there's really, yeah.
yeah, I didn't go through anything like that. But um, the new marching band candidates, if you were accepted as a potential member of the marching band, you had to audition just for that, and then you went through an extra week of training. And it's like, I mean, it's in Florida and it's before the semester starts, so it's summer and it's friggin' hot. It's so hot. And it's, you go through this really challenging experience together. And I don't have contact. I literally have contact with one person from college, and it's not one of my fellow gunkies, as we were called. But I can literally picture them, the people who were on my squad. And we, I know who my trainer essentially was. I remember what she looked like. I could tell you her name, and just, I remember them very
Yeah.
vividly. And we were, that you get to know each other really well when you go through those sorts of struggles together. And so it's guided struggle, like it's created struggle. But in our case, at least, we were literally training to be in the band. We had an extra week of practice and training, because we needed it, because the other people who were coming back, and they had to re-audition for their spots too, was on the second week. But they only, if they'd been a member before, they only needed to audition if they got the audition spot. They came back for that second week, because it was assumed if you've been in the band before, you don't need 2 full weeks of preseason training. You just need one. But if you're completely new, you need to choose you get the 2 weeks, so that you have better chance at getting your spot. And then you audition again. Then it was really, really hard, and it was hot and it was uncomfortable. But and some people decided that there were other things that were more important, and they dropped out during that week.
Yeah.
So I mean, it reminds me a lot of that, because it is crafted to be difficult, but there is a reason for it. It's not just randomly difficult. And the military school is different, because they are, they're mean to him in a way that our, the older students who were training us were not allowed to be,
Right.
because it was a different experience. There was a different purpose for it. Whereas here, his cadet squad is, I don't know, it's just a different purpose. The military school is there to, you're sent to military school because you're not behaving correctly, and you need to have some sense beat into your, not quite to that extent, but you need structure. And ours was different, and in that we needed training in, this is the way that this particular marching band, this is our style, these are traditional songs and things like that. So it was different, but there were some similarities.
Yeah, well, I think you kind of you made the important distinction there when you said that the upperclassmen in your case were not allowed to abuse you the way that the upperclassmen in military school, at least in Wes's experience, at least, were allowed to abuse him. Um, but yeah, so he calls his mom with his 5 minutes and his one phone call, and he tries to convince his mom to let him come home, and she's like, "Nope, you just got there." He's at this point. Remember, he's been there like less than a week at this point. Um, and I think they said it was like day 4 when they gave him the fake map. Um, and she says, "Nope, you got to stay. You got to at least give it a chance." And we also learn. Wes also tells us, and he didn't know this at the time, but he has since learned that um, that his grandparents had paid for his first year of tuition by taking money out of the equity of their house, which was basically all the money they had. Like they had put a lot of money into their house, with the idea being that eventually they would use that money to move back to Jamaica and retire. And they took that, so basically their nest egg, their retirement money, and they gave that to Wes's mom to pay for his military school. So there's a lot, literally, there's a lot invested in his education at this point, and she is not willing to just let him come home. So he's stuck there.
And I mean, on top of that, she's also written to family and friends, just literally begging for money. I
Yes.
mean, this is a GoFundMe before the internet, guys, in 1991.
Yeah.
GoFundMe doesn't exist. So she is doing like a letter writing campaign on her own for her son.
Yeah. To go to the school that he wants to leave
That she
after the
can't
first.
afford.
Yeah. That she can't
Despite
afford.
the
Yeah.
fact that, you know, she's been, you know, scrimping and saving to get him to this private school, to Riverdale.
Yeah. Because like Riverdale, this, I mean, this is a fairly prestigious military school. The famous alumni or alumnus from this one is General Schwarzkopf, we're told, which, and this is 1991, so it's right after the Gulf
Yeah.
War, the first Gulf War. So, you know, General Schwarzkopf was like a huge celebrity at that time. And so, you know, you go into the military school that General Schwarzkopf went to, that's a big deal. So it's, you know, so anyway, so he's stuck at the academy. He has to stay there. And the next day he's going to lunch, or second mess as they call it. And he sees F Company. And F Company are sort of like the most elite company of cadets. They're the ones that the term that they use is they're the most squared off, like, which means they're like literally like they're the sharpest. They've got their shit together. They're the neatest, and they're like the cream of the crop, the best of the best. And the cadet captain of, I keep wanting to call him F Troop. That's not it. The cadet captain of F Company is someone who, again, we learn through the narration that that Wes's mom knows, that she had become aware of him through the admissions officer at the school, who I think is a family friend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Charles Chapman with the Star Trek reference. Yes, F Company is like Red Squad, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, and his name is Captain Hill, Captain Ty Hill, and he's like the big man on campus. You know, he's like the you know, the cadet to beat all other cadets. And Wes's mom had apparently asked him to look out for Wes, to keep an eye on him. And after Wes got his 5-minute phone call with his mom and then got sent out of the office, his mom called back and asked to talk to Captain Hill and reminded him to keep an eye out for Wes. So as the scene ends, as the or not just the scene, but as the Wes the author section ends, Wes is at lunch, and Colonel Bat comes up to him at lunch and says, "When you're done, go over to F Company, because the company commander wants to talk to you." So we're left with sort of a cliffhanger. The commander of the elite, the prestigious Company F, Captain Hill, wants to talk to him.
What's the most important part, the most important descriptor for Captain Hill?
Let me scroll back and look through.
Did you miss this? Did you say it and I missed that you said it?
I mean, Wes is very impressed by him. He said, I had never seen a peer demand that much respect from his people. And this was real respect, the kind you can't beat or scare out of people.
Go back to the beginning of the previous paragraph. The next day, as we prepared to head to second mess, which was what they tellingly called lunch, I noticed the black man from the night before standing next to Colonel Bat.
Oh yes, he's a Captain Ty or Captain Hill is black, so it's not just a cadet who is sharp and well respected, but he's a black man who is uh,
who everybody listens
demanding this
to.
kind of respect. Yeah,
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 not and Charles Chapman brings it up, the discussion of what respect means. And this is something that I actually bring up significantly earlier in the semester, typically talking about, what is it? I think the writing prompt I give them is, should you show respect to everyone? Why or why not? And so I get a variety of responses. And so I'll usually pull a couple of sentences to discuss, as a group. But usually it illustrates the difference between respect as in, a general sort of level of consideration, basic consideration for human dignity, as in, treat everybody with, grace. And then also respect in the sense of esteem, which is what we see here. That,
admiration,
people listen to him and do what he says. And it's not out of a sense of fear, it's out of a sense of trust. He knows what he's talking about. It is that sort of respect. It is esteem.
Yeah.
And, but also, that he is an authority figure and he has earned that, but also that he has earned the authority that has been granted to him. He has done something to get that authority. So, definitely the discussion of what the author means in this case by respect. So yeah, I think it is very significant, and I think that's part of why that's why Colonel Bow had pulled him in to show, this is what could happen. This is what we're capable of achieving as an example. And, because, there is that concern that, he doesn't, like we see with the other West, that he hasn't had that sort of male role model in his life.
Yeah.
That's been absent. I mean, essentially, Ty Hill is for the author what Tony is for the other West.
Exactly. And he's basically the exact opposite of Tony, because he is he's an example of success within the system.
Mm-hmm.
So, he's sort of demonstrating to Wes that you can play by the rules, even if the rules are made by people who aren't like us and who don't always have our best interests at heart, or don't even, and aren't even, in a lot of cases probably aren't even aware of the kinds of prejudices that they harbor against us and the ways in which they make our lives more difficult than they need to be. But if I can do it, you can do it, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, just judging by how the book has gone so far, seems to have been a very strongly formative experience for Wes the author.
Yes, I would definitely agree with
it
that.
seems like he definitely, whatever lessons he learned from Captain Hill here, like it seems like he really internalized that, for better and for worse. But yeah, so that's where we leave off with the first, with Wes the author at this point in this chapter. Is he's about to have his first conversation with Captain Hill.
I do want to go back because it's something that I pulled from the text for my students, and it's back on, for me, page 95.
Okay.
It's in the it's sort of in a flashback in the conversation with the mother.
Okay.
About the grandparents. These forks in the road can happen so fast for young boys. Within months or even weeks, their journeys can take a decisive and possibly irrevocable turn. With no intervention or the wrong intervention, they can be lost forever. My mother made the decision to intervene and decided that overdoing it was better than doing nothing at all. So, it's some interesting word choices there. Specifically young boys. The use of young boys,
not young girls.
Not young people.
Not young people, just specifically young boys. Yeah.
that was interesting. Um, and then also the choice between overdoing it and nothing at all. I, Dude, she wasn't doing nothing. She was making
Yeah,
all kinds of sacrifices so that she could send the author to the private school. And that apparently was not enough.
right.
Um, you know, there might have been other possibilities. Sending him off to live with relatives in, a small town or something like that, removing him from some of these, city influences or, something like that. There were other, it's not one thing or the other. I think that's a false choice
Yeah.
there. But rhetorically, it's effective, despite the fact that it's, a logical fallacy.
Yeah.
And there's reasons that these, we see these things crop up again and again because they're effective. So
It also reminds us of the space that this kind of concern, this kind of fear, can take up in the mind of a parent.
yeah,
That especially a black parent who has grown up in or around this environment and seen and is
and
aware.
seeing what can happen.
Yeah.
I
And
don't want my son ending up like this person, this person, this person, that, or ending up buried like this person, this person, this person.
exactly. And it reminds me of how my upbringing was very different than this. I remember, like, I know my parents, especially my father, had a great deal of stress over me and my brother getting jobs and being able to take care of ourselves. My dad had a lot of stress about are you going to be okay? You know, and not just him. I know there were a lot of parents of people that I knew where there was a tremendous amount of anxiety from parents of, what are you going to do after school?
Yeah,
Where are you going to go to college? Where are you going to go? What are you going to go for? There's someone I knew who wanted to go to school for music, and her parents said, absolutely not. You're not going to school for music. You can't use music. You can't get a job with a music degree. You're going to go to school for this instead. And it was purely because there was a lot of anxiety, a lot of economic anxiety about
yeah,
what are you going to do after school? How are you going to take care of yourself? How are you going to earn a living? That was the anxiety that my parents and parents of people like me in my neighborhood, in my area, put on us. We didn't have, and I can't imagine my father ever being seriously worried, or my mother, or any of the parental figures, anybody who cared about me, ever being specifically worried that I would turn to a life of crime, or I would, go into a lifestyle where I would be, at risk for being murdered or for being arrested and going to prison or anything like that. Like that was not within the realm of possibility for me or for people like me who grew up in my part of the country and in my area. It just was not there at all. It just didn't exist. But
Hi, Aurelian. Now it's interesting because, of course, that's the fear for young boys. Of course, the fear for young girls is less often that you're going to, get involved in drugs and a life of crime, and you're going to get knocked up,
yeah, yeah.
and
Which, hey,
you're going to get pregnant, and then you won't be able to finish school, you won't be able to go to college, you won't be
right.
able to get a good job because you're going to be busy taking care of the baby, and who's going to support you, and what if he leaves you, and da da da. So it's interesting because that's just not even, it's not even in here, because of course the author's a guy.
Yeah.
So that's not as much of a concern.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, that doesn't mean he can't be involved.
And that's a nice segue to the second half of the chapter, is it not?
It is. It is.
Because we check in now with the other Wes and see what he's up to in 1991, and he's waiting for he's waiting for what they call the cheese bus, so called because it's described as being yellow and boxy like a block of government issued cheese. And it's the bus that takes him to the school that he's going to now, which is called the Perry Hall School in West Baltimore, which is 25 minutes from where he lives. So this is the school that he's uh, going to. And he has his friend, who is also described as his god brother, Red, and they're on the bus. And this particular morning, while they're riding the bus, they notice two girls that they've never seen before, and they decide to go chat up these girls. And so Wes, they sort of, which one do you want, And so Wes goes and he starts talking to this girl, and and it turns out that they're sisters. It turns out that they're twins, although they don't really look alike. And Wes goes up to talk to this girl, and they hit it off. Her name is Alicia, and his friend Red isn't as successful. His friend Red goes to talk to the other girl, and turns out she already has a boyfriend. So sorry, Red, you're out of luck. But Wes and Alicia start going out, and within 2 months, just what you were talking about a minute ago, within 2 months of them hooking up for the first time, Alicia is pregnant. Uh-oh. And there's a nice detail here where it just to sort of put you into the head of these teenagers and how panicked they must have been. It's said that Alicia told Wes that her period was late. 4 tests and 8 matching plus signs later, it was confirmed. So they weren't happy with one pregnancy test. She had to get that thing tested 4 times before she was like, all right, fine. I guess I have to accept this now. you know, there's no getting around it. I'm definitely pregnant. And this is also interesting too. What you were saying about the authors, not just the author, but the characters that we're following being men, and just the bias and the perspective. I love this line here. Wes was dazed. He kept the news to himself for an entire month. How could Alicia have let herself get pregnant? Like it was her fault. Like it was her responsibility. You should have done something about this. How can you have let this happen? Um, you know.
Yeah.
But he finally decides he tries to keep it a secret as long as he can, but they can't hide it forever because Alicia's starting to show, and so the first person that Wes decides to tell is Tony. So he tells Tony, and Tony laughs. And the reason why Tony laughs is because Wes's mom, we're told, has just had another baby relatively recently. Um, and Tony has had a kid. So the reason Tony is laughing is because he has realized that Wes has a brother and a nephew and is about to have a son, it says, but
Mm-hmm.
that will be all around the same age. So that Tony finds this hilarious that you're about to have your own kid and you have a brother and a nephew and they're all going to be the same age. How fucked up is your life?
Yeah.
Um, and he says this is some sitcom shit. So Tony thinks it's at least, you know what? At least Tony's having a good time. I feel like Tony is low key the hero of this so far. Uh,
Do
at
you
least,
really?
not really, but I mean,
Okay.
but at least, but I'm like, oh, good for you. Go, just live your life, Tony. Do whatever you want. But yeah. So, and then we get a little bit of background on the neighborhood in the city, and Wes, the author, informs us that Wes and Alicia getting pregnant like this was not unusual. That in Baltimore in 1991, 11.7% of girls Alicia's age had given birth. So it's not a rare occurrence at all. And that's probably, as you were saying about parents are worried that their young men will get killed or become drug dealers or something, and they're worried that their young women will get knocked up. And
Yeah.
because this is a thing that happens to a lot of people, it's not an unusual occurrence at all. So he decides he has to tell his mom. Yeah, go ahead.
Also the line, he didn't feel burdened by the thought that early parenthood would wreck his future plans because he didn't
That's
have
right.
any future plans.
That's right. Yeah, he didn't. And also,
He's making money.
yeah. and as we find out in a minute, it's not even really cramping his style as far as dating, because he's continuing to see other girls while Alicia is pregnant. Um, but yeah, so he decides that uh, he's going to tell his mom. So he invites Alicia over to their house for his baby brother's birthday party. And while they're around the table getting some cake, Tony is the one who lets it slip. Tony, you scamp, you rascal. He says, Mom, don't you think it's crazy that you just had a baby and my girlfriend just had a baby and now there's someone else at the table who's going to have a baby? And everybody, of
Who
course,
could that be?
and everybody like looks, over at Wes and Alicia, and
Wes is like, well, it's not me.
Yeah, hey. And I love this description of Wes's mom. It says, Mary closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She's cutting the cake. She's in the process of cutting the cake when this comes out.
She's holding a knife.
She's holding the knife. So it says, Mary closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She put down the cake knife and locked her fingers behind her head, then arched her back as if trying to work out some deep tension. After a moment, she brought her arms back to her sides, exhaled, and looked around the table. So who wants cake? It's just, I love this. She is just trying so hard to keep it together. Her children keep fucking up. And she's just like, okay.
Well, ain't nothing I can do now.
Exactly. It's like, well, okay. Yep. Might as well have the cake. Who wants cake? Let's eat. Eat, drink, be merry, because tomorrow there will be less to go around because there's going to be one more mouth to feed.
I mean, pregnancy takes a while, Steve.
Tomorrow.
I mean, I know you don't have to worry about it anymore.
That's true. Tomorrow, rhetorically speaking.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
So yeah, Wes gets to see his dad again in the next scene.
Yes, that's right. Because we're told that his aunts and uncles all sort of live in a couple of houses on the same street. So whenever he's in a particular neighborhood, he always goes and visits his family. And this one particular time when he goes to pay a visit, his dad is crashing there, and his dad is asleep on the couch. And Wes hasn't seen his dad for a long time. And Tony is with him. And Tony's like, hey, there's your dad asleep on the couch. So Wes is like, well, I mean, I'm here. I should go say hi to him. Like, I shouldn't just leave without saying hello. So he goes over, has to shake the old man to wake him up. Like, his dad is not trying to wake up. And finally he wakes up and he looks up at Wes and he says, who are you? Doesn't recognize his own son. And Tony says, I would punch him in the face if I was you. And again, Tony thinks this is hilarious. Tony thinks this is hysterical. He's like, if I was you, I would punch him in the face. But Wes doesn't punch him. He just leaves. He just kind of looks at Tony and is like, let's go. And he leaves. And it says he never answered his father's question. He never told his father who he was. He just left. So, at least Tony was having a good time. Wes ain't having a good time, but Tony's having a good time.
So much.
Yeah, no. So then we hear about how Wes is still dating other girls.
Playing the game.
He's still, exactly. So, and he meets this one particular girl who he starts seeing regularly, who starts coming over to his place. And she comes over to see him one night, and then I guess they fall asleep, and she wakes up and she's like, I have to go. Like, I have to get home because it's too late for me to be out. Right. Because again, just to remind everybody, these are fucking teenagers. Right. Like,
and she's can actually reverse that as well.
Yeah. Yes. They are indeed also teenagers fucking. So she's like, I got to go. I got to get the fuck out of here. Right. So she gets up. And she's like, Wes, if you were a gentleman, you would walk me out. So Wes is like, and he's like, all right, fine. And he throws on some clothes and he's walking her outside, and she steps outside and there's someone out there waiting for her, who is described as an older teenager, a tall, muscular, older teenager. Maybe her boyfriend, maybe someone who, knows that
brother or something.
older brother, something, knows that she's somewhere she's not supposed to be. And he says, "What are you doing at his house?" He says something else, but I'm not going to say exactly what he says. But he says, what are you doing coming out of his house?" And she's like, "Why are you spying on me? What are you doing here?" They get into an argument. Wes gets involved. The guy who is Ray, the guy who was yelling at her, steps up to Wes and basically beats Wes up. Punches him in the face a couple of times, knocks him down.
Well, in fairness, Wes is just like, whatever, y'all can argue all you want. He
right.
starts hitting inside, and the guy grabs him from the back.
The guy sees Wes and is like, "You're part of this too," and starts.
And so, I mean, he gets Wes at a disadvantage. He doesn't quite sucker punch him, but he sucker grabs him and slams him down, and then he starts punching him while he's down. So,
which, by the way, excellent way to win a fight.
Oh yeah, just let the guy walk off, and then when he thinks he's out of it, then go after him and start the fight when he's not expecting you to.
Yeah, and then just exactly
except you got to keep going until he stays down. Which I was going to say, did not do.
As my dad used to tell me, knock him down and then stomp on him and don't let him up. That is my dad's strategy for how to win a fight. I've never actually had to do that, but that's what my dad told me to do, to knock him down and then just start stomping him and don't let him up.
You've been punched though, haven't you?
I have been punched, yes, but I've never had like a full on like fight, where we were like swinging at each other. I mean, I've never had like what I would call like an actual fight, but I have been punched. Yeah. And I didn't even have it coming.
I'm sorry.
Can you believe that? All the times when I have done things that were worth getting punched for.
Like, I'll take your word for it, Steve. I trust you.
Thank you, Dana.
Somewhat.
Thank you.
Wow.
That.
Would
but anyway,
you want me to lie?
No, never.
Sometimes, but not in this case.
No, no, I want you to tell a different truth. I don't want you to lie. I want you to tell a different truth. So Wes gets beat the fuck up a little bit, and he remembers once again Tony's advice to him, which is we're reminded of it here: send a message. If somebody makes you look bad, you go make them look even worse so that people know not to mess with you. And Wes is like, I know what I must do. So he goes up to his room and he gets his gun, which of course he has because he's in the drug game and he's got a gun to take care of himself. And he goes and gets his gun, goes outside. And by this point, Ray is hiding. Ray's still in the area, but he's not just standing out in the open. So Wes goes looking around for Ray. By this point, one of Wes's friends has heard the commotion and has come on the scene, also with a gun. So Wes and his friend are sort of prowling the street looking for Ray. And when they see Ray pop up from his hiding place, they start shooting. And eventually they're shooting at Ray, and eventually Ray goes down and they hear him yell in pain as though he's been hit by one of these gunshots. And they're like, all right, we got him. So Wes goes back inside. He hides his gun in the bottom of his fish tank, which actually is a pretty good hiding place. I give Wes a lot of credit for that. I mean, the cops will
specifically, he ain't got fish.
No, he's got a turtle, but he ain't got fish. Yeah.
Wait.
Didn't it say he has that there's a turtle in there?
Yeah. A large green snapping turtle.
Yeah. So people
it's not just a turtle.
So people aren't going to. So people aren't.
They're not.
Yeah.
You want the gun? Good, go for it.
Exactly, exactly. So, I mean, and again, it's a good hiding space. And I'm sure that if the cops go in there with a search warrant, I'm sure the cops are smart enough to check the bottom of the fish tank. But even so, some thought has been put into this. Like, this is a good
They
hiding
gonna
space.
earn it.
Exactly. You're gonna, yeah, if you can get past my fucking snapping turtle, you can have the gun. So he hides the gun in the bottom of the fish tank under the sand with the snapping turtle. He cleans himself up. He changes his clothes, and by the time he's cleaned up and changed, the cops have arrived because there were shots fired on the street. The cops are gonna be there. The cops, Radical Bacon, who keeps a fucking snapping turtle as a pet.
Somebody who might have a gun to hide one day.
Hey, I guess it comes in handy. I saw a snapping turtle once bite a broom handle in half. It was badass. Anyway, so the cops show up. They
Was this like at the zoo or something? Were they doing an exhibit?
No, actually, my dad caught one. I can't remember if it was because I don't you remember the stream that runs back behind my dad's house. I don't know
Yeah.
if yeah
Mhm.
the spring from which the town of Clear Spring derives its name.
Ooh, is it clear?
It's very clear.
See,
It's
there you
very
go.
clear. So, but it's there's a field behind the house where I grew up. There's our backyard, and then there's a field, and then at the back end of this field is the stream, the Clear Spring. And I don't know if he found it back there or if it had wandered up from there because it's the closest water source, and I can't imagine where else a snapping turtle would have, you know, been
Been chilling.
nearby. Yeah. So, but somehow he caught a snapping turtle, and I remember my dad had it, and I think eventually he took it somewhere and let it go. I think he might have taken it to the river because we lived near our house was close to the river too. It was like maybe a 5-10 minute drive away. So I think eventually he took it to the river and let it go. But while he was keeping it, he had it in a bucket of water, and he had a broom that he stuck in the bucket, just to sort of play with the turtle and the
To
snapping
screw with it.
to screw with it for our entertainment. And the snapping turtle reached out with its mouth and snapped the broom handle off. So that's why they call them snapping turtles. And like I say, and I think I was maybe like 10, maybe even a little younger, and it was like the most badass thing I'd ever seen. I was like, oh my fucking holy shit. It
Like,
snapped
okay,
it,
lesson learned. Glad that was a broom handle.
yeah, exactly. It
And
bit
not my 10-year-old arm.
exactly. That animal in that bucket bit that broom in half. Okay, cool. Um, but anyway, so the cops show up and they come into Wes's house, and they put him in the back of the car. And before they drive off, Wes says, "Hey, can you stop
Hang
and let
on,
me?"
hang on. I'd
Yeah,
like to point out that
please
Wes is pretty fucking badass here too.
go. Yeah.
Can you edit that out?
Edit out your F bomb.
Wes is, taking some risks here as well because he puts the gun in and then he reaches into the tank with the snapping turtle
Yes.
and make sure the gun is under the sand.
Mixes the sand up to cover the gun. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well,
And
maybe
there's
he
a
has.
snapping turtle in the tank. It takes up like half the tank. And he reaches in with his bare hand.
Yeah, he does. Absolutely, he does.
Okay, so.
Tony would be so proud.
Except Tony doesn't get to talk to Wes because.
No. So yeah, the cops show up and they put him in they handcuff him. They put him in the back of the car, and he says, "Let me say something to my mom, please, before you drive away." So the cop rolls the window down a little bit, and Wes yells out to his mom.
Because she had asked him when he came in if he was the one who shot somebody.
Right. Yeah. She said, was it you?" Yeah. And he answers. I mean, he answers honestly. He says, "I don't know," because he doesn't know if it was him or if it was his friend, because they were both shooting at the same guy, and
Yeah.
one of them must have hit him, but he doesn't know who, because they were both just blasting away. So he says, "About your question, I don't know the answer." And then the cops pull away, and then Tony shows up. Tony shows up after everything was already over. And Wes's mom says to Tony, "You're too late. Wes is already gone." And that's the end of the chapter. So, again, a much more eventful chapter for the other Wes than for Wes the author. I feel like Wes the author's section reminded me a little bit of the last couple of episodes of Loki, where it just feels like we're just kind of killing time. Like the real important shit is happening to the other Wes, and it's not that Wes the author going to military school isn't important, but it's
Yeah.
like, we find out that he's in military school, and we get to the point where he's about to meet this mentor figure at the end, but that doesn't actually happen yet. So we're just sort
I
of
would
like,
say the attempt to escape and
yeah, I
the
guess.
acceptance of where he's at as a result of the failed escape, I think that's important. But yeah, it's not nearly as flashy as a gunfight and getting arrested.
Yeah, and possibly killing
and
somebody
putting your hand in a tank with a snapping turtle.
with a snapping turtle with, I can only assume, broom snapping bite strength. I mean,
maybe he just makes sure that it's really well fed and lazy.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, snapping turtles come in many shapes and sizes too. I mean, the
Yes.
snapping turtle that we had that bit the broom in half was a very large snapping turtle.
Yeah.
He could just have maybe a little bitty one like that. Would bite like pencils and stuff in half, but maybe wouldn't.
Well, I mean, the thing said it was a 65-gallon tank.
That's true. That's a big tank.
And it
That's a
says
big
it took
tank.
up half the tank. So
that's a big turtle. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
that's a big turtle.
Yeah. I think he must have kept it. Maybe it was just, maybe it was a chill turtle.
Yeah, it's just.
And I mean, and again, this is a snapping turtle that was kept as a pet, not in the wild. It doesn't have to fight for its life against, I don't know what the predators are, but it doesn't have to like search for its food or anything like that. It's like, yay, food and water. I'm cool.
Maybe he's just, he's not necessarily super snappy.
Yeah, he's not a grumpy snapper.
No, he just, he snaps when if he feels a snap is warranted, he'll snap. But other than that, He's pretty chill. Yeah.
Well, so we did a pretty good job, I think, of kind of talking about this as we went along. I don't know that I have anything else that I.
No.
We hit all my points that I had notes on.
Oh, I was just gonna say.
I was gonna say that I think I think it's difficult to remember dialogue, like exactly what people said from like yesterday, let alone 10, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the choice of words there is chosen by Radical Bacon. That's terrible. Shame on you.
I think that's
Shame
hilarious.
on you.
Do the turtles on Snapchat. Puns are the highest form of humor.
You're reaching.
It's been known to happen.
Because it's a high form of, so you're reaching. Anyway, but yeah, when Wes's mother says Wes is already gone,
yeah,
I think that dialogue choice is crafted dialogue to mean more than just literally he's been arrested and taken away.
Oh, sure. And I agree. I mean, and that doesn't bother me.
No, not at all. But I just, we hadn't talked about that's used to mean more than what it says. Wes is already gone.
Oh yeah, there's definitely a double meaning there. Yeah, absolutely. And it's and like that's writing.
Yep.
Like that's writing.
You mean the curtains aren't just blue?
Exactly.
I haven't written that script yet, folks, but there's going to be a video on that.
Everything is a decision. Everything that a writer shares with you is a choice that writer makes.
Yep. There's a reason the curtains are blue, folks. There's always
a reason. There's
like legitimately, not in this room, but in the next room, I've got blue curtains, and there's a reason that they're blue.
What's the reason?
Well, they're blue, specifically dark blue, because we wanted curtains that would help keep light out. And so it was like dark blue, black, or brown. And the hand-me-down sofas that we have in the living room have blue in them.
Ah.
So we got blue.
to match the
because
sofa.
that was one of the color options that would help keep light out. And it matched what we already had.
Huzzah.
There you go.
Huzzah. But yeah, I assume that most of the dialogue in this is constructed. I mean, even because like even when you think you remember exactly what somebody said,
You
you
probably
probably don't. Or at least it's likely that you do. I'm sure there are cases where you do remember it exactly the way it was said. But I mean, I know I've had the experience too many times of watching a movie that I haven't watched for a while, but it's a movie that, maybe I used to watch all the time or left a really strong impression on me. And there's a scene or a line or something that I thought I remembered exactly. And then when that scene happens, it's not how I remember it. And sometimes the difference is just that much. It's maybe there's just a word different. But in my memory, I was absolutely positive that it was this. And then I watch it and it's not. So and that's like proof that my memory was wrong, even if it was just wrong in a really trivial way. Like I was sure that that was it and it wasn't. So I've had that happen to me way too many times to not realize that your memory is.
I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying that that's never happened to me, but if it has, I've forgotten it.
Well, that's another way to deal with it.
I mean, usually when, like, usually my problem is I just don't remember. Like, I just don't remember. And if I remember something, it's usually accurate. It's that usually I just don't. I'm like, what's? Oh my God, that movie has that guy. Oh my God, and what's the movie? Oh, I can see his face. Yeah, and then like I can't tell you the actor's name, and I can't tell you the movie that he's from, so you can't get the actor from the movie or the movie from the actor. So like I'm just suffering because I'm like it's right there, and I can't get it.
Oh yeah, I hate that. And then you wake up at 2:30 and it's right there, and you're like, now I have nobody to tell about it.
No, see that last part that doesn't happen with me. I just forget that I was suffering eventually.
Whatever.
So it doesn't matter. Yeah. I don't mind it too much because I'm like eventually the people are like this is just going to bother me until I figure it out. I'm like no, eventually I'll just forget about that too. So it's great. Yes, Charles Chapman, exactly. That's a great one. That is a great one.
E.T. Phone home.
No, that's the line.
He says home phone.
Yes, it's not ET phone home.
It's home phone.
Like, now I will say, Drew Barrymore's character, she's the one who says that that's what he means. Phone ET phone home.
Oh, right.
Home. But he doesn't say it.
It's just like in Star Trek, nobody ever actually says "Beam me up, Scotty."
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you just recently.
Give me an example from Star Wars, and I'll know what you're talking about.
Well, no. Well, okay. Well, Vader.
Nice laugh, Steve.
No. Well, Vader doesn't say, "Luke, I am your father."
Yes.
That's not. I mean,
no. I am your father.
Yeah, exactly.
Search your feelings, wallop the hand.
You know it to be true,
as you do.
Yeah. Although I do remember Hamill's amazing. No, I remember that perfectly. It's the long big no followed by the pitiful little no. That is burned in my brain, and that is acting. No, but it just happened to me recently because and I've tweeted about it a little bit, and I've talked to you about it. I've been rewatching the original Saved by the Bell.
Yeah,
because the new Saved by the Bell is awesome.
It's actually good.
It is amazing, and I think they're shooting a second season of it, and I can't wait because the first season was just tremendous. So I went back and watched the original, and there was, and of course, one of the most famous and most made fun of episodes of the original Saved by the Bell is the one where Jesse has a drug problem.
Very special episode.
She takes caffeine pills. That's the drug problem. I'm not saying that dependence on caffeine pills couldn't necessarily be a bad thing, but it's treated like she's like a heroin addict. I mean, she's taking some caffeine pills to help stay awake to study, and she's spreading herself too thin and has too much on her plate, and she's taking caffeine pills. And I'm not saying that it's not a problem, but they treat it like it's some kind of like she's got like a habit for OxyContin or something. Like
okay. So
yeah.
I'm gonna take over and go on a tangent because the
Please.
problem is not the caffeine pills.
It's the dependency.
No. It's it's a really great illustration of drug addiction as not a moral problem and not a medical problem, but a medical symptom. The trauma, the underlying trauma is the problem. And the dependency is a way of dealing with that.
It's a coping.
And so the problem is the stress from the unreasonable expectations. And I think I wish they would have dealt with that, because I think that's something that's incredibly relevant and that stays relevant for students in any era.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
The pressure of, this is, you have to, like we see in the Other West More, the decisions that you make now are going to shape the course of your life. No pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
Have
Don't
fun.
screw up.
These are the best years of your life. Sorry, kids. They can be great years. They can be great years.
Yeah.
I love my students, but I hope that these are not the best years of your life. I hope that and we were just talking with Zabby and Max, his, I think, youngest sister is about to turn 30, and he's going to pick on her for it, because she picked on him when he turned 30. And I just, I didn't say anything because, it's his little sister. But I'm thinking, no, my 20s were good, but my 30s were even better. And so far, my 40s have been even better yet. Because the best part is I haven't had cancer this decade.
Woo!
But I mean, it can keep getting better. It can keep getting better. And I don't remember them, saying you don't have to do it all. It's okay.
Yeah.
And I wish they'd gone on that. So anyway, I'm sorry.
No, but so the line from that episode that I remembered and that I have quoted incessantly for years. It's almost always whenever. I mean, it's the one, because I watched Saved by the Bell when it was originally on when I was a kid. I watched it, and so I've had it in my brain for 30 years. And the line is in my head. It's when Zach sees Jesse taking the pills, right? And it's like the big moment where when she says, "I'm so excited, and then she breaks down and goes, "I'm so scared," right? It's right before that. And the line in my head was Zach seeing her with the pills, and he goes, "Jesse, you're doing drugs?" That's not what he says.
What's he
in
say?
The episode? He says Jesse starts to sort of lose it, and she's kind of being pulled in like three directions at once. And Zach says, "It's going to be okay. Calm down. It's going to be okay." And Jesse says, "You're right. It is going to be okay." And she rushes to her drawer and pulls out her pill bottle. And she's like, "I just need a few of these." And Zach he sees the pills and he goes, "Pills? You are doing drugs?" And that's the line.
So it's just a little bit off.
It's just a little bit off. It's basically the same. But in my brain, it was always, "Jesse, you're doing drugs?" And it looks exactly like I remember it. But he doesn't say, "Jesse, you're doing drugs." He sort of says, "Pills, you are doing drugs." And I was like, I could have sworn it didn't go that way, but that's how it is. So yeah.
Rose Organa, it's so nice to see you here. And I'm so glad. I hope you're liking the book. I hope you're finding the discussion interesting, and feel free to, if you have questions or ideas about chapter 5, just throw them in the chat there. But I think we are kind of wrapping up. We're going off on tangents at this point.
Yeah.
Woo! So, but yeah, and then we'll be back in another 2 weeks for chapter 6.
Chapter 6, yeah. I hope everybody who's reading along with us is getting something out of the book, because I do think, I do think it's been a good book so far, and there hasn't been
big sigh.
there was that, I think it was in the first, was it the first chapter or the second chapter where there was a really lovely bit of writing where he without underlining it, he drew sort of a parallel between their two fathers.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's early on. I think that's the
I
first chapter.
think that's
Yeah.
first chapter, and that's like really, it's just beautiful writing, really well done. And there hasn't been another moment like that has struck me as, damn, that's good writing.
Yeah.
But I have still, I mean, just judging it, never mind like the issues that it deals with, and the you know, the sort of biographical stuff about the two Wesses that we're told and what we think about that. Just as a piece of writing, I still think it's a very solid
It's
piece of
strong.
writing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but nothing has
TV
jumped out at
Zombie
me.
5, please do not, you don't, it's okay if you do, but you don't feel that you need to apologize for puns and pop culture jokes, because as you've seen, we're,
Yeah.
they're welcome. They're more than welcome here. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I'm not going to get mad at you. I mean, you've just confessed that ET is your favorite video game. So clearly you're damaged in some way and you deserve sympathy and empathy. So, I mean, even if I were annoyed by the jokes and the puns, which I mean, I'm the target audience for puns, so you're fine there. But, you know, clearly you've led a life of great pain if ET is your favorite video game. So you have my sympathies, you know.
I'm enjoying Pokemon Go. So that tells you where I am.
I
I'm
think
out of date and mobile gaming. Woo!
I played the ET video game once just to say that I had done it. I think I played it for like 5 minutes and then I was like, okay, I get it. I know why this is the most hated video game ever. And then I stepped away, you know. So
Oh, I didn't know it was the most hated video game
the
ever.
ET video game, yeah, if you, yeah, it's the it's I think it's probably the consensus pick for worst video game ever. I'm sure there are other people who have arguments for other games, but it's like the most notoriously awful video game ever made. Yeah.
I think one of the reasons that I like mobile gaming is that I got into it not too much later than everybody else, whereas I grew up and we didn't have any gaming systems at all,
Right.
ever. Like, I mean, digital ones. We had Uno and Pit and Scrabble and Pictionary and
Yeah.
like regular cards and things like that. So like to the extent that I don't know if we had Uno. We had Connect Four, and we had some of the pieces of Mousetrap, and so we would use them to sort of like make believe, and like we would have the mice chase each other, but we didn't have all the parts to actually play the game, so we would just like use it with the Lego set and just build stuff. But yeah, so like I am not good at operating a controller. It's like if you don't learn to play the piano when you're young, it's really hard,
Right.
and you're not supposed to look at your fingers, but you can't not look at your fingers to figure out what you're supposed to look up at and then look down at the same thing. They're like, press X to start. I'm like, okay, where's the
Which one
X?
is that? Yeah, yeah. You don't
Yeah,
have the natural sort of feel for it.
I don't. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
and it takes practice to get better, but like all of the like games that are effectively designed to introduce someone to using the controller and becoming a gamer, like they're for like 5-year-olds, and they're not really interesting.
Right.
Um, although I will say, what were they playing? There was some game, and it was some sort of combat game, and as Abby said, just press XXY, and then just keep pressing that until they're dead. And I was like, that's my kind of game, because once I figured it out. Although, I mean, that was when I was in college, I could play Tekken. As long as I played the bear, they had to unlock the bear, and then I could play the bear. Although later on, I found out that the bear had the same basic move set as Kazuya. And so if you go triangle, triangle, square, or else it was square, square, triangle. I don't know. It's been decades, guys. And he would come up and he would do this bear hug, but you had to get in really close. So I would go over, triangle, triangle, square, triangle, triangle, square, triangle, triangle, square, triangle, triangle, square. And eventually I would win. And it was just like, I would just be like, I just do this thing over and over and over until the game's over. And it was kind of like, it was really intense, and it wasn't boring while it was happening because I had to stay focused and I couldn't think about how repetitive it was. But after it was over, I would just be like, there really wasn't any point to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like the ones where you have to move, God, just moving is hard. Even when you get, you're like, you have to use WASD. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
no, don't like
Yeah.
it. Don't
I remember,
like it.
I mean, as I've talked about a little bit here and there, like, I mean, I've never been a big gamer ever. The last console that I owned was a PlayStation 2. And there was right after I got it for maybe a year or so, like I did play it a lot. But even then, like I had almost all of my games were like wrestling games or baseball games. Like I
Of
never got
course they
into
were,
like,
Steve.
I never got into like the games that I did play the Resident Evil games for a while. And so I got into, I think Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 I played, pretty regularly. And Vice City came out. Grand Theft Auto Vice City came out when I had my PlayStation 2, and I played that for a while. But I mean, other than those, like the other, like I've never played or ever felt the least inclination to play like a Call of Duty game or any of like the big popular game franchises that have been around for years and
Mario
that
Kart,
everybody played. Never played Mario Kart.
either.
Um, I played I mean, I played like like the old school. When I had my NES, I played like, the Mario games, but I never, I've
Ba-doop,
never
ba-doop,
played.
ba-doop.
Yeah, I've never played Mario Kart. Um, you know, uh, I mean, you'd like the sort of the RPG type games like Final Fantasy and stuff never really appealed to me. So, but so even when I had like what at the time was the state of the art game console, like I didn't, I used it to play a relatively small cross section of games, and that was it.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I did
yeah.
play World of Warcraft for a while. And man, let me tell you, once they introduced flying, best. Because you could just like avoid all of the mobs and just fly around and look at pretty things. And then I did I think I did mining and jewel crafting. So I could just fly around, get my mining stuff, and then make things and then sell them. And that was it. That was all I wanted to do. And then when they introduced pet battling, that was fun too, because you could just fly around and do this thing, and then you could, and like there's like minimal pressure. You're not gonna die. Yeah, that was just, yeah, like I like the low pressure games. It's just,
Yeah.
anything with a timer, do not want. Yeah. And then I will say, although even with that, because it didn't work on all the bosses, I played Dragon Age for a while, because I found the cheat code. You could program in a script, and then you could just type in kill all enemies, and
Woo.
it would, as stated, kill all enemies.
Kill all enemies, indeed.
But in some of the story-based fights where you had to like fight your way into this thing and kill whatever it is that is cursing the populace or whatever it was, oh yeah. Radical Bacon, they did have a recent animated Carmen Sandiego that I remember enjoying the first bits of before COVID hit, and then I couldn't think. So I didn't really watch much television since then, honestly. I think I haven't watched any of Loki except for the closing credits to episode 2 or 3, which was interesting. It was. I mean, the director's female.
That's right. The composer.
The composer's female, and the editor's a dude. So like all 4 of those are like, typically a different gender. Like all 4 of those are because quite often editing is done by women.
There are a lot more, a lot more prominent women editors.
Really interesting. So and I hadn't listened to music much, but you said it's good, so I'm gonna have to look up who that is and see if I can find any of her other stuff. So I'll have to listen to some of that.
Yeah, the music.
Actually, watch the show.
The music from Loki is one of the best parts.
Superman and Lois. So maybe over the next week I'll attempt to get caught up.
Okay. Well, I think the last one you watched was episode 3. I think. Let me see how many episodes we're up to now.
Yeah, Rose Organic, exactly. Yeah, I mean, no, we didn't have anything like that.
We're up to episode 11 of
Oh my
Superman and Lois.
God.
So
It's just, I mean, it just seems like a chore at that point. And it's supposed to be fun, but I'm just like, I have to pay attention to it. And God, I just don't get it. I'm not that patient. Maybe
apparently there will
tomorrow.
be a total. There will be a total of 15 this season.
Oh my
So
God, that's so many episodes. I mean, it's not really, but I mean, not compared to like, traditional
oh
American
yeah, like a
television.
24 something episode season. Yeah.
God, it just seems like a lot. I
Well,
mean, we've gotten through Firefly now,
that's
and I'm
true.
just like, that was good. That seems normal now. I mean, people pitched a fit at the time because it was only half season.
Only
like,
19 episodes. Yeah.
It's great. Just
Yeah.
stop there. Just stop.
Yeah, that's good. That's
Stop
plenty.
there.
Honestly, having watched it all now, I can say I feel like it was the perfect amount of Firefly. Like if I had watched it at the time and they had made like many more seasons, I probably wouldn't have watched those anyway. I'd be like, no, I'm good. I got it. I think I get it.
Yeah, we get the idea.
I get the idea.
Although I know you're excited for next week with DS9.
DS9, that's right. So yeah, we're next week we're back to Deep Space Nine for Trek Reluctantly, and we're watching the episode is Dramatis Personae, which is one of my favorites because it has some great Avery Brooks overacting. Some good Nana Visitor overacting as well, or Nana Visitor overacting as well. But you can't.
Lovely. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't. Nobody steps to Avery Brooks when it comes to overacting.
We'll see. I don't know if I'll agree with you.
That'll be interesting. But yeah, I'm telling you, he's
chewing it up.
He chews scenery like nobody's business. When he goes for it, he goes for it.
Oh man, I don't know, man. You haven't. I've told you, haven't I, that our Mr. Carmichael.
Oh, or not Carmichael. You always call him Carmichael, but his name is Carriage. Carrisford.
Yes.
Yeah.
So okay, so next Friday. So it's getting towards 8. So let's wrap.
Yeah, we'll wrap up. Yeah.
Do you have is wrestling tonight?
No, wrestling was on Wednesday.
Okay.
But we should wrap up anyway.
It has to come back. Okay, so
yeah.
So next week we've got DS9.
Yes.
However, you have a video coming out on Monday.
I do.
Is that not so?
I do. It is all done and scheduled, and it is a commentary. It's like a video essay about critical race theory, and about how not everything you're afraid of is critical race theory. Because it seems like
I'm interested to see this. I was a little. I mean, man, you just blew through that. You knew what you wanted to say, and you went through it. Because I was thinking that we might have been able to do a conversation video on that one. But,
well, we still could. I would love to. I mean, it's only like a 10-minute video. Like I didn't cover everything that could be.
Well, I tell you what, I'll watch the video.
Yeah,
and then maybe
do a video
with response to it.
I would love to do a video with you about it because you, as a teacher, I mean, I'm sure would have much different insight into it than I would, but yeah, I mean, so that's Monday, and that's about how
Wednesday is that your Batman video?
Wednesday is the Batman video that I'm
actually looking forward to that because
that's
something I actually know about as opposed to all your Star Trek stuff.
I downloaded. I think I downloaded all of the graphics that I need for it, like the comic panels that I'm going to show and everything. It's about the Steve Englehart, Marshall Rogers run on Detective Comics in 1977 and 78, which I think is my favorite run from any creative team ever on Batman. And it'll be the start of a series about different versions of Batman over the years, and what makes them great and why I like them. So that's coming along nicely. I shot it, and now I'm editing it, and dropping in the graphics and stuff. So that'll be Wednesday, and Wednesday night is also our next Trek Reluctantly. And then next Friday, a week from tonight, is the next Ask Away. So there you go.
Which I won't be able to see.
Because you will be on stage because your play is running again. Because you're off this weekend for 4th of July.
Yes.
And then you run next weekend for this, and that'll be the end, right?
It.
Yeah.
I'll be so ready for that to be it. But We also have a performance next Saturday. And that's the performance that's going to be live streamed.
Yes. Yes. Now, are people going to, because for 1984, you had to buy a ticket. Is that going to be like, you have to pay like,
I
you know,
think so. And
okay.
I don't have information about how to buy a ticket or anything like that yet. But I'm hoping that by next Wednesday, I will.
And we can, yeah.
So if anybody here is interested in watching along, you could do that. And there would be, I mean, you wouldn't have, Steve on screen, but you could watch. And then, Steve will be in the chat, and, maybe some other people that will be in the chat.
I'm definitely going to watch it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I just didn't know if you were going to be being a peanut gallery. Unfortunately, I will miss out on that. So
you will be on stage.
I will be on stage for most of it. Sometimes I'll be off stage and I'll be yelling at everybody from backstage. Well, honestly, Radical Bacon, they're still working on setting it up, because they're actually in production on the next show, and they just had auditions for the show after that. So our producer is like, wearing multiple different kinds of hats, because she's also been, the one who's making sure, she's the one who's been taking tickets at each of our shows. And she's also the one handling the auditions for each of the shows. And she's been going through and getting costumes and props and things for the next show. And so, yeah, she's, bless her little heart, she's working about trying to get the theater. And she literally, I don't remember if it was on Final Dress or on opening night, she told us about, sort of one of the theater traditions is, about, they have on, when their first show opened, like the night before on Final Dress, they found some coins on the stage. And so they picked them up and put them away. But then after their performance, they found more coins on the stage. And so they picked them up and put them away. And then when they came back for the first performance, there were more coins on the stage. And so, the story is that there's a theater ghost. Wow. And so you put, like, everybody puts coins hidden in different places around the theater. And so she's telling us this, and she says that when they closed for COVID, they'd gone around and collected all the coins in this jar. And she said, and that she hadn't known if they were going to be able to do that again. And so this was the first time I got to do it, because 1984, we live streamed it. We didn't have an audience.
There wasn't an audience. Yeah.
So this is the first time that and she's telling us about this and telling us that, she didn't know if, because we've all known that COVID is, we're going to be able to deal with it. We'll figure out a way to, keep going and to, progress as a society despite, this pandemic. We'll develop ways of dealing with it. But it's a little community theater, and, if she'd had to get a job that took up all of her time and didn't allow her to work with the theater, that's it.
Yeah.
Who
else is going to do it? Yeah,
hard
exactly.
to make ends meet in theater. And so, if it had gone another year, it might have closed permanently.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure a lot of local theaters did.
Yeah.
Around the country. Yeah, because you're right. Like, if they're not running, if they're not able to have a show up and sell tickets, like,
yeah,
you don't do it. So it's just like we were
because they had the moratorium on rent for residents.
Right.
But that didn't, that's one of the things I was really frustrated with, was they didn't have a rent moratorium for, like, businesses.
Yeah.
And if your business can't be open, as a theater, no, what are you going to do? So, definitely you're not a essential service by any stretch of the imagination. And so, but you still have to pay rent on the space. And
yeah, exactly.
They had the water and the lights turned off. But they still had to pay rent for the space and taxes on it, or the taxes are, I guess, built into the rent or whatever, but just, yeah. And they did have donations and stuff, but, and I was just like, oh my gosh, she just has such a big heart. So I know they're doing what they can.
Well, and hopefully now that things are starting to get back to normal, and we'll be able to continue, and we won't, things will.
Well, like I said, we're doing a Little Princess, and it's in the public domain, and it was adapted by somebody, like, sort of somebody, the director is the one who wrote the adaptation.
Right. So there's no licensing fee. Yeah.
And the next one they're doing is The Great Gatsby, which is also in the public domain. And I think it was an adaptation. They didn't have to purchase it. It was somebody.
Oh,
you
really?
know,
Okay.
yeah. So they did the same thing. So I'm thinking that everything that they bring in is going towards keeping the theater running. They aren't going to have any royalties that they have to pay
Yeah.
for either of these two
That, I
shows.
mean, that will, yeah, that's just, goes along with, I'm sure, wanting to cut costs as much as possible. I
Yeah.
mean, especially in probably the next year or so while they're
Oh yeah.
getting back up, after
Yeah.
having to
Get back up.
have,
Get back going.
yeah, yeah,
So
that's great. Oh man, I would love to adapt The Great Gatsby for the stage.
well, it's too late. They already have it
I
written.
know they already have one. I'm sure their script is fine.
So
Anyway, so
anyhow,
yeah, so that'll be, so hopefully by Wednesday you'll have some information for where people can go and how, if how they can get tickets to watch the live stream version of
mhm.
A Little Princess, which will be on a week from tomorrow. Will be next Saturday. So yeah, that'll be exciting. I can't wait to see it because
I'm so glad.
yeah, I can't wait to see it. So anyway, thanks everybody for being with
Nope.
us.
Nope.
Like, oh
Wait. One
no,
more thing.
oh, charity links.
Charity links.
Charity links. I almost forgot. Charity links. Don't forget
Yes.
please don't do what I almost just did and forget about the charity links. Charitylinks.page is the address. It's linked down in the description. It takes you to a Google Doc that has GoFundMe links and PayPal links and other sorts of fundraisers for friends of ours who need a helping hand, who are in a little bit of financial hardship. And if you are watching this and you can possibly afford to help them out, please do so. That would make our day, and it would certainly make their day. So yeah, Radical Bacon, Great Gatsby, make Nick gay. Oh, in other words, just adapt the book. No, I'm kidding. That's people ship Nick is not gay, but people do. It's an obvious ship of the Great Gatsby is to ship Nick and Gatsby because I mean,
Because why not?
because Nick is obviously into Gatsby. Let's be honest. You read the narration and it doesn't exactly sound like he doesn't like Gatsby.
Oh, Loretta Reyes. No, I am not the little princess. I'm
No,
the mean, mean headmistress.
you're Miss Minchin.
I'm Miss Minchin.
Yeah. And I bet you're amazing. So
I
anyway,
won't say that you're wrong. Well, I will
well,
say that you're wrong, Steve, but I don't think you're wrong in this.
if you believe me to be wrong, you will
I
definitely
let you
say it.
know.
You will definitely say it. But in this case, so anyway, so that's it. Don't forget the charity links. Don't forget all the other stuff we talked about. Is everything? Oh, don't forget Dana's YouTube channel. You're kind of you're taking a little bit of a rest for now, but it's youtube.com/Dana Calderas. You have a bunch of awesome videos up there. So if anybody has
Please
not,
leave me comments.
please watch Dana's stuff and leave her comments. And that's it. So thanks everybody for watching. Have a good rest of the night. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you next week. Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
guys.